Hi, everybody. This is LibraryAnn, and I'm excited because today I'm going to continue reading to you from the book Rabbi Rocketpower in Who Hogged the Hallah, a Shabbat Shabang. This one was written by Rabbi Susan Abramson and Ariel Dvorkin, illustrated by Ariel DiOrio. And today I'm going to read chapters 4, 5, and 6. Chapter 4, A Kosher Catastrophe. While Mandy and Becky ran to get Rabbi Mensch, Aaron inched closer to the storage room door. He began to smell something that he'd never smelled in a temple before. It wasn't sweet and it wasn't sour. It smelled like some sort of meat, but it wasn't chicken and it wasn't beef. He stopped, closed his eyes, and inhaled. Suddenly it hit him. Ham. He recognized that smell from when he had stopped by his neighbor's house once while they were eating dinner. As he crept closer, the voices became clearer, but he couldn't understand a word they were saying. The amhe is side in the alache. The akenbay is on the ukizke. Here's Aaron smelling. Umiye. Aaron took a deep breath, knelt down, and peered under the door. He couldn't believe his eyes. There was a bunch of short, plump creatures. Their hair stuck straight up from their egg-shaped heads. They had pointy ears. Their glasses had rear-view mirrors, and it looked like some of their feet were on backwards. Here's a picture of those creatures. As Aaron watched in disbelief, the creatures squished bacon bits into the chocolate chip cookies, slid slices of ham into his mother's challah, and poured green liquid into the kiddush cups. As they laughed and chuckled, they stuffed half of the food into their mouths and took a drink out of each of the cups. Aaron slapped his hands over his mouth so they couldn't hear him gasp. Weird-looking creatures putting ham in the temple's desserts on Shabbat? This was a disaster. And if that wasn't bad enough, they were eating his favorite desserts and ruining his mother's challah. I've got to tell Mom, he shuddered as he backed out of the kitchen as quickly and quietly as he could. But as he ran out the door, he nearly banged into Mandy and Becky. Your mom was busy studying Torah, so we couldn't bother her, Mandy reported out of breath. It was something about how swine are unclean. Aaron, what are swine? Asked Becky. They're pigs. The Torah says we shouldn't eat them, breathed Aaron. He began to panic. If he didn't do something quickly, everyone in the temple would be eating that very forbidden food after the Shabbat service and not even know it. He figured it was useless to try to get his mother's attention. The best he could do was keep an eye on the creatures and make it sure that Mandy and Becky stayed out of danger. Did my mother say that you two were going to give out prayer books this evening? He asked, thinking quickly. Make sure everyone goes right into the sanctuary. I've got food to save. Chapter 5, Alien Nation Confrontation. Just as Aaron arrived at the kitchen door, he stopped in his tracks. The invaders were walking backwards out of the storage room, carrying the trays of food. One of them was balancing a stack of whoopie pies on his head and shouting, Ukle miat. Two of them were throwing cupcakes at each other and giggling uncontrollably. On turn the ship space, ordered another. Another one pointed a remote control toward the back of the building and pressed a button. Suddenly, Aaron heard a whirring, grinding noise coming from behind the building. He ran to the back door and peeked outside. There he saw a big yellow rocket ship with its nose in the ground and its rocket boosters in the air. It was sputtering and shaking like an old car that had just been turned on and was revving up its engine. Aaron's heart began to pound so hard he thought it might burst out of his chest. Oh my God, he muttered. They ruined the Oneg Shabbat, and now they're going to get away with it. I've got to tell Mom. But by the time he raced to the sanctuary, Rabbi Mensch was walking down the aisle to begin the service. Mom, Aaron demanded, running after her and tugging on her talit. You're not going to believe what's going on behind the temple. Can't you see I'm busy? She murmured. But Mom, Aaron insisted, stamping his foot. He was so flustered he didn't know what to do. Suddenly it dawned on him. If he couldn't get her attention, he would have to defend the temple himself. He could use the karate moves he'd been working on over the past few months. Aaron ran back to the social hall ready for action. But when he got there, all he saw were the half-eaten, ham-filled desserts and the kiddush cups half-filled with green liquid sitting on the tables. As he looked around, he spotted the last creature shuffling out the back door. Phew, Aaron sighed with relief. Although he really liked the idea of fighting aliens, particularly to save the temple, somehow he didn't feel so brave when he saw them in person. He counted to 10, gathered up his courage, and peered out the back door. Here he is, practicing his judo moves. Bang! Aaron jumped as a big ramp from the spaceship landed on the ground. The aliens, who had just left the temple, began scurrying up it backwards, hooting and hollering and slapping each other on the back. Others began chasing each other down the ramp, untucking their torn shirts from their ripped pants and chewing what looked like long strips of bacon. Some of the bigger ones were playing next to the spaceship, throwing clumps of dirt at each other and rolling in the mud. Aaron was so confused that his head began to spin. The aliens didn't seem bad, but they were acting so weird that he couldn't figure out what they were doing. One thing was clear. Even though they had turned on their spaceship, they weren't getting ready to leave. A group of them began jumping from foot to foot and banging on pots. They waved to an alien who was lying on his back, snoring. Molash, Tabash, Ibar, they yelled. It suddenly dawned on Aaron that everything about them was backwards. They walked backwards. Their hair went up instead of down. They talked backwards. He realized that Molash, Tabash, Ibar meant Shabbat, Shalom, Rabbi. Even their rabbi was backwards. The others were leading him instead of the other way around. Time to blow out the Tabash Eldnaks, the creatures shouted. Aaron translated in his head. Oh no, they just said it's time to blow out the Shabbat candles. When the Ibar rolled over and continued sleeping, they danced over and picked him up. Then, to Aaron's dismay, they all began doing the hokey pokey and headed toward the temple. Chapter 6. Nothing like a Shabbat Shalom. Aaron raced back to the sanctuary, frantically trying to figure out how to get his mother to listen to him. He ran in just as Rabbi Mensch was beginning the service. Shabbat Shalom, everybody, she announced. It's time to light the Shabbat candles. Tonight, we're in for a special treat. After services, we're going to have the most delicious desserts ever. As you know, many of us made our all-time favorite recipes for the Oneg Shabbat. I made my famous hysterical challah. I can't wait till you all try it. Oh my God, Aaron shouted before he could stop himself. She had no idea just how hysterical her challah was right now. His mother gave him a bewildered look and continued. Every Friday night is supposed to be like a wedding between Shabbat and the Jewish people. That's why we put on nice clothes. That's why our Shabbat dinner is like a banquet, with a white tablecloth, our best dishes, traditional Jewish foods, challah, wine, candles, and blessings. That's why we begin our service by singing Lecha Dodi, the song which welcomes the Shabbat bride. Aaron groaned loudly. Little did his mother know that the Shabbat bride wasn't the only visitor that everyone was about to meet this week. His mother frowned at him and continued, "So let's light the Shabbat candles to show that our special day of peace and rest has begun." Aaron couldn't sit still any longer. As Mandy and Becky lit the candles with their grandmother, he tiptoed over to the corner of the bima and motioned to his mother. Rabbi Mensch leaned over. "What's the matter?" she whispered, beginning to lose her patience. There's on the bima what's happening. Aaron took a deep breath and blurted out as quietly as he could, "A bunch of weird-looking aliens speaking some strange language filled the Oneg Shabbat food with ham and ate half of it, then turned on their spaceship behind the temple, covered themselves with dirt, and now they're heading back this way." "Trephinators," his mother gasped. "I just heard about them at a rabbi's meeting the other day. Every Friday night, they invade another temple. I was afraid they'd get us too." She whispered to the cantor that she needed to leave, but would be back by the time he finished singing Lecha Dodi. The cantor rolled his eyes. He knew what that meant. He would have to keep singing while Rabbi Mensch went on another mission. Fortunately, he also knew that she had the superpowers to stop invaders and get back to services before anyone noticed she was gone. Rabbi Mensch and Aaron walked as calmly as they could to the back of the sanctuary. When they got to the front hall, they dashed to her office. "Quick, call Dad and ask him to find all the information he can about the Trephinators," Rabbi Mensch uttered, "and ask him to find Pur." "Pur?" Aaron asked, surprised. "I thought you said you'd never bring her to the temple." "We need all the help we can get," his mother shrugged as she began to spin. Before you could say Shabbat Shalom, she transformed into the courageous Rabbi Rocketpower. She wore her blue outfit with the big white Jewish star on the front. On her back was a special talit-like cape. "Oy vey, up and away, Rabbi Rocketpower will save the day," she shouted, in a whisper, of course, so the congregation couldn't hear, and disappeared into thin air. And that's the end of chapter 6. And next time I'll read chapters 7, 8, and 9. So again, this was Rabbi Rocketpower in Who Hogged the Hallah, a Shabbat Shabang by Rabbi Susan Abramson and Aaron Dvorkin. Happy reading, everybody.